My husband demanded, "Sign this. You're giving up all our property in my favor." I was 73. I got scared and signed. A week later, he filed for divorce. But he forgot that 40 years ago I had managed to. Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. For 47 years, I believed I knew my husband Richard better than anyone in the world. We raised 3 children in our modest 2-story house in suburban Portland. We celebrated anniversaries, survived financial struggles, and grew old together. Or so I thought. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning in September. I was 73, Richard was 76. I found him in his study, papers spread across the mahogany desk my father had given us as a wedding gift. When I entered with his coffee, he quickly shuffled the documents into a drawer. His hands trembled slightly. "Just sorting through some old files," he said, not meeting my eyes. I didn't think much of it then. Richard had always been private about certain matters, but over the following weeks, the strangeness multiplied. He started receiving calls he'd take in the garage. Our joint credit card statements stopped arriving in the mail. He claimed he'd switched to paperless to help the environment. At 76, Richard had never cared about the environment before. Then came the visits from his younger brother Marcus and Marcus's wife Patricia. They'd never been close to us, lived 3 states away in California. Suddenly they were driving up every other weekend, closeting themselves with Richard in his study for hours. When I'd bring them tea, conversation would halt mid-sentence. "Just discussing some investments," Marcus would say with that slick smile of his. I knew Marcus. He'd borrowed money from us twice over the years and never paid it back. Richard always made excuses for him. "He's family," he'd say. One evening in late October, I overheard Richard on the phone in the garage. "I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I was simply taking out the recycling. I told you, she doesn't suspect anything." Richard's voice carried through the thin garage door. "The house alone is worth over $600,000 now. Plus her mother's estate." "Yes, I know what I'm doing. We'll be set." My hands went numb. The recycling bin clattered to the ground. Who was he talking about? Surely not me? I stood frozen in our driveway, the November wind cutting through my cardigan, staring at our house. Our house. The one we'd bought together in 1978, the one where I'd raised our children, planted the garden, painted every room at least twice. Was Richard actually planning something? The confrontation came 2 weeks later, on a gray afternoon that seemed to leach all color from the world. I was folding laundry in the living room when Richard walked in with Marcus. Both their faces were set, hard. "Barbara," Richard said, my name sounding foreign in his mouth. "We need to talk." He placed a document on the coffee table, legal-sized papers, dense with text. "What is this?" I asked, though my heart already knew. "You need to sign this," Richard said. His voice was flat, mechanical. "It's just a formality, reorganizing our assets for tax purposes." I picked up the papers with shaking hands. Through my reading glasses, the words swam into focus. Transfer of all marital property, relinquishment of ownership rights, sole ownership to Richard James Morrison. "This says I'm giving up everything," I whispered. "The house, the savings, everything." "It's just paperwork, Barbara," Marcus interjected smoothly. "Smart estate planning. Reduces tax burden." "Then why am I signing away my rights?" I looked at Richard. "Why not both our names?" Richard's face flushed red. His hand slammed down on the table, making me jump. "Sign it!" he shouted. "Stop questioning everything. You're giving up all our property in my favor. This is my decision." I had never heard him yell like that in 47 years. Never seen that coldness in his eyes. At 73, I suddenly felt every one of my years. My hands trembled. My heart raced. Marcus stood behind Richard like a silent enforcer. What if I refused? What if Richard became violent? I was alone in this house with two men who suddenly seemed like strangers. Fear won. With a shaking hand, I signed my name on every line Richard pointed to. Barbara Ann Morrison. Over and over, signing away my life. Good, Richard said, gathering the papers quickly. That wasn't so hard, was it? He and Marcus left the room. I heard them laughing in the kitchen. I sat there in the growing darkness, the pen still in my hand, realizing I had just made a terrible mistake. 1 week later, the divorce papers arrived. The envelope sat on the kitchen counter like a coiled snake. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Richard wasn't home. He'd been staying at Marcus and Patricia's place, temporarily, he'd said. Temporary. After 47 years of marriage, I'd become temporary. I made myself read through every page. Richard was filing for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences. He wanted the house, my house, sold. Proceeds to go entirely to him based on the property agreement signed November 15th. He wanted the savings accounts, the investment portfolio my mother had left me, even the vintage car that had been my father's. I would get nothing, not even spousal support. The document claimed I had voluntarily relinquished all claims to marital assets. How could I have been so stupid? How could I have signed those papers? I sat at that kitchen table for hours, adding up everything I was losing. The house, $620,000, according to the latest assessment. My mother's inheritance, roughly $280,000 in bonds and investments. The savings we'd accumulated, another $150,000. Richard's pension, I'd be entitled to half normally, but now, over $1 million gone. Signed away in a moment of fear. At 73, I'd be homeless and penniless. Our children, David in Seattle, Karen in Boston, Michael in Denver, they had their own families, their own mortgages and struggles. I couldn't burden them. Where would I even go? A senior apartment on Social Security? I'd worked part-time most of my adult life, raising the kids. My Social Security barely covered groceries. The panic attack came around midnight. I couldn't breathe. The kitchen walls seemed to close in. I gripped the counter, gasping, certain I was dying. But I didn't die. As my breathing slowly steadied, something else settled over me. Something cold and clear. I was not going to let Richard destroy me. I was not going to disappear quietly into poverty while he and Marcus celebrated their con. Because that's what this was. A con. Probably planned for months, maybe years. How long had Richard been pretending to love me while plotting this? I made tea, chamomile, my mother's remedy for everything, and forced myself to think strategically. What resources did I have? What had I overlooked? That's when I remembered. My hand froze halfway to my mouth, the teacup trembling. 40 years ago. The summer of 1985. I had been 33, pregnant with Michael, our youngest. Richard had just started his new job at the aerospace company. We'd been so happy, so hopeful about our future. My mother had pulled me aside during a visit. "Barbara?" she'd said, her face serious in a way I'd rarely seen. "I want to give you something. Not for Richard to know about. Just for you." She'd taken me to her lawyer's office in downtown Portland. There, she'd set up a trust. A small piece of property she owned in the Columbia River Gorge, 20 acres of forested land she'd inherited from her parents. Remote, undeveloped, worthless at the time. "Men change," my mother had said quietly. "I loved your father, but I watched my friends lose everything in divorces. This land is in your name only. A trust your husband cannot touch. Don't tell Richard." Keep the documents safe. Hope you never need it, but if you do. I had put those documents in my safety deposit box at the bank. The box Richard didn't know existed, opened with money from my part-time bookkeeping jobs. Over 40 years, I'd received annual property tax bills, tiny amounts, $200 or $300, which I'd paid from my small personal checking account. I hadn't thought about that land in years. It was just forest, after all. No road access, no utilities. But what was it worth now? The Columbia River Gorge had exploded in value. Hiking trails, tourism, wealthy Portland families building vacation homes. My hands shook as I opened my laptop. A gift from Karen last Christmas. I searched for comparable properties in the area. My breath caught. 20-acre lots in the gorge were selling for $400,000. Sometimes more. I had an asset. An asset Richard knew nothing about. An asset he couldn't claim because it wasn't marital property. My mother had established the trust before our marriage, technically, though she'd transferred it to me after. For the first time in a week, I smiled. Richard thought he'd taken everything, but he'd forgotten one crucial detail. He'd underestimated me. I needed a lawyer. A good one. Not the family attorney Richard used, someone completely separate. Someone who would fight for me. Tomorrow, I would start fighting back. Tonight, I finally slept. The law office of Jennifer Chen was nothing like the mahogany-paneled establishment where Richard's attorney worked. It occupied the third floor of a converted warehouse in northeast Portland, all exposed brick and large windows. Jennifer herself was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for taking on difficult divorce cases. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Tell me everything." I did. The entire story spilled out. Richard's strange behavior, Marcus's involvement, the coerced signature, the divorce papers. Jennifer listened without interrupting, taking notes on her laptop. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "The document you signed is problematic," she said honestly, "but not necessarily fatal to your case. You were coerced, that's duress. You're elderly." "I'm 73, not senile," I interrupted. She smiled slightly. "Poor choice of words. You're a senior citizen who was intimidated by two men into signing away your rights without independent legal counsel present. That's textbook duress. We can fight this." Relief flooded through me. "And the land? The trust my mother set up?" Jennifer's expression brightened. "That's separate property, established before marriage, never commingled with marital assets. If you've been paying the property taxes from a separate account, it's even cleaner. Richard has no claim to it whatsoever." "How much would it cost to fight him?" "My retainer is $15,000, Jennifer said gently. "I know that's steep, but I can get a loan against the land," I said. "I checked this morning. The bank said they could do a property equity line." Jennifer nodded approvingly. "Smart. Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm filing a response to the divorce petition challenging the property transfer agreement on grounds of duress and lack of consideration. Second, I'm requesting a forensic accounting of all marital assets. I want to see if Richard has been hiding money. Third, I'm filing for temporary spousal support. You're entitled to maintain your standard of living during the divorce proceedings." "Won't that make him angry?" "Mrs. Morrison, he's already trying to leave you homeless and penniless. His anger is irrelevant. Your survival is what matters." I signed the retainer agreement that afternoon. Jennifer said she'd file the paperwork by end of week. When I got home, Richard's car was in the driveway. My stomach clenched. He hadn't been to the house in 10 days. He was in the kitchen, making coffee, acting as if he still lived here. "Barbara," he said, barely looking at me, "I'm taking the rest of my clothes. Marcus is coming with a truck this weekend to get the furniture from my study." "Your study?" I said quietly. "This is still my house too, Richard." He laughed. "Not for long. You signed it away, remember? I was coerced. His head snapped up. What? I'm not signing the divorce agreement, I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. I've hired an attorney, Jennifer Chen. She's filing a response challenging everything. Richard's face went purple. You can't afford an attorney! I found a way. His eyes narrowed. What way? You have no money. I control everything. He stopped abruptly. You control everything? I repeated. Is that what this was about? Control? He set down the coffee mug hard enough to slosh liquid onto the counter. You're being ridiculous. That document is legal. You signed it willingly. Under duress, with your brother standing there like hired muscle. Marcus was just, Richard sputtered. The front door opened. Marcus walked in without knocking. Richie, the truck's out. He saw me and stopped. Barbara. Marcus, I said coldly. I was just telling Barbara she's wasting her time with lawyers, Richard said. Marcus's expression hardened. You hired a lawyer? Bad move, Barbara. Very bad move. You're just going to drain whatever little money you have left fighting this. Richard has rights to everything. You signed it over. We'll see what a judge says about that. Judges side with whoever has better lawyers, Marcus said smoothly, and Richard can afford the best. You're throwing away what little you have. Get out of my house, I said. Both of you. It's not your house, Richard started. Until a judge says otherwise, I have every right to be here. You moved out. This is my residence. Now leave before I call the police. They left, but not before Richard turned at the door. You're making a huge mistake, Barbara. This is going to destroy you. After they drove away, I locked every door and window. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. From anger. That evening, Jennifer called. Mrs. Morrison, I've been going through public records. I found something interesting. Your husband opened 3 new credit cards in the last 6 months. Combined credit limit of $120,000, all maxed out. What did he spend it on? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. This could be dissipation of marital assets, spending money deliberately to keep it from you in the divorce. If we can prove that, then what? Then he's going to have to account for every penny, and the judge is not going to be happy. After we hung up, I sat in the darkening living room and smiled. Richard had made his first mistake. He'd thought I would roll over and accept defeat. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. Jennifer worked fast. Within 2 weeks, she'd filed a motion to freeze all marital assets pending the divorce proceedings. The judge granted a temporary order. Richard couldn't sell the house, drain the accounts, or make any major financial moves without court approval. When Richard found out, he showed up at my door at 9 o'clock at night, pounding so hard I thought he'd break it down. You froze my accounts, he screamed through the door. I can't access my own money. Our money, I called back, not opening the door. And I didn't freeze anything. The court did. This is financial abuse. I'll have you arrested. Call the police then, I said calmly. Explain to them why you're harassing your elderly wife at night. He didn't call the police, but the war had truly begun. Jennifer's forensic accountant was a meticulous woman named Diane who treated financial records like archaeological treasures. Within a week, she'd uncovered Richard's trail. The $120,000 in credit card debt? He'd transferred it all to Marcus. Cash advances, balance transfers. Marcus had been receiving money for months. This is fraud, Jennifer said when we met in her office. He was deliberately moving marital assets to his brother to hide them from you. We have bank records showing the transfers. Can we prove it? Already did. I've subpoenaed Marcus's bank records too. He's going to have to return that money, and Richard is going to have to explain to a judge why he committed financial fraud against his wife. But Marcus and Richard weren't going quietly. 3 days later, I found Marcus and Patricia on my doorstep. It was a Saturday morning. I was still in my bathrobe, having slept poorly. "Barbara, we need to talk," Patricia said, her voice dripping false sweetness. "Can we come in?" Every instinct screamed no, but I also wanted to hear what they'd say. I left the chain on the door. Talk from there. Marcus's friendly mask was gone. "You're destroying this family. You know that. Our kids are asking why Uncle Richard and Aunt Barbara are fighting. You're making everyone miserable. Richard filed for divorce, not me. Because you've become impossible to live with," Patricia snapped. "He told us how you've changed. Paranoid, accusatory, refusing to cooperate." "Cooperate with being robbed?" Marcus stepped closer to the door. "That money I received from Richard? That was a legitimate loan repayment. From 20 years ago. We have documentation." "Funny how that documentation appeared right after my lawyer subpoenaed your records." "You have no proof of anything," Marcus hissed. "And you're going to drop this lawsuit, withdraw your challenges, and accept Richard's generous settlement offer." "Generous? I get nothing." "You get to walk away quietly," Patricia said. "Otherwise, things could get very ugly for you, Barbara. We know things about you, about your past." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "Your little problem back in the 90s, Marcus said with a nasty smile. "The shoplifting incident. It was handled quietly, but we found the records. How would your children feel knowing their mother is a thief?" I stared at them. "In 1994, during a particularly stressful time when Michael was ill and I was exhausted and not thinking clearly, I'd accidentally walked out of a store with an unpaid item in my purse. Security had stopped me. It had been mortifying, but the store manager had been kind. No charges, just a warning, after I'd explained and offered to pay double. You're going to blackmail me with a 30-year-old mistake that was never even prosecuted?" "We're offering you a way out," Marcus said. "Drop the challenges. Take Richard's deal. Or we start making phone calls. To your kids. To your church friends. To everyone you know. We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." My hands clenched the edge of the door. Part of me wanted to slam it in their faces, but another part, the part that had learned to be strategic, wanted to know everything. "Get off my property," I said quietly, "and tell Richard that if he wants to negotiate, he can do it through lawyers like civilized people, not through threats and blackmail." "You're making a mistake," Marcus started. "I'm calling the police, right now. You have 10 seconds to leave." They left, but Marcus turned at the end of the walkway. "This isn't over, Barbara. We're just getting started." I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, my heart racing. Then I called Jennifer. "They threatened you," she said, fury in her voice, "with blackmail. Barbara, that's a crime. We could file charges." "No," I said slowly. "Not yet. Let them think they've intimidated me. Let them feel confident." "What are you thinking?" "They're desperate. People make mistakes when they're desperate. I want to see what they do next." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "You're tougher than they thought, aren't you?" "My mother taught me something," I said. "Never let them see you sweat. And never, ever underestimate a grandmother." Over the next few days, I did something Richard wouldn't expect. I went quiet. No lawyer calls, no demands, no confrontations. I let them wonder. I spent the time resting, walking in the park near my house, having coffee with my neighbor Helen, who'd been my friend for 20 years. I needed to recharge. The stress had been wearing me down. I'd lost 10 pounds, wasn't sleeping well. "You look exhausted," Helen said over coffee at her kitchen table. "I am," I admitted, "but I can't stop now." "What did Richard do to deserve this fight?" I told her. Everything. When I finished, Helen was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "My divorce nearly destroyed me. I let my ex take everything because I was too tired to fight. Don't be like me, Barbara. Finish this. I will, I promised. By the end of the week, I felt stronger, ready for whatever came next. And something was definitely coming. I could feel it. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Expensive cream-colored paper, Richard's careful handwriting. My dearest Barbara, I've had time to reflect on everything that's happened between us. I realize now that we've both made mistakes. Perhaps we've let lawyers and misunderstandings drive us apart. I miss you. I miss our life together. Could we meet? Just the two of us, no lawyers, no family. Let's talk like we used to. I think we can work this out if we just sit down together. I still love you. I've always loved you. Yours, Richard. I read it twice, standing in my kitchen. On the surface, it was everything I might have wanted to hear a month ago. An apology, a reconciliation. But I knew Richard. 47 years of marriage taught you the difference between genuine emotion and calculated manipulation. This wasn't love. This was strategy. Still, I was curious. What was Richard playing at? What did he really want? I texted him back. Coffee, Monday afternoon. The cafe on Morrison Street, 2 p.m. Public place, daytime, people around, safe. Jennifer was less enthusiastic when I told her. He's going to try to get you to drop the case, she warned. Promise you won't sign anything, agree to anything, without calling me first. I won't. I just want to hear what he has to say. Monday came. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, chose a table near the window where I could see the street, and ordered chamomile tea. Richard arrived exactly on time, carrying flowers. Roses. My favorite. Once upon a time. Barbara, he said softly, setting them on the table. Thank you for meeting me. He looked older, tired. Part of me felt a pang of sympathy. 47 years don't dissolve easily. But I kept my expression neutral. What do you want, Richard? He sat down, reached across the table for my hand. I pulled it back. I want to fix this, he said. I've been an idiot, a fool. Marcus got in my head with all these ideas about protecting assets, estate planning. I lost sight of what matters. You matter. Our marriage matters. You filed for divorce. I'll withdraw it. We can tear up those papers you signed, start fresh, see a marriage counselor, whatever you want. I sipped my tea. And the money Marcus took? Richard's jaw tightened slightly. That was a legitimate loan repayment. Your brother never paid us back for anything in 40 years, but suddenly he's repaying a mystery loan the exact same week I hire a lawyer? Richard, do you think I'm stupid? No. I think you're suspicious and hurt, and you have every right to be. But we can move past this. What about the house? The assets? We'll put everything back in both our names. Joint ownership, like it should be. I was wrong to ask you to sign them over. It was a good performance. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed him. I need time to think, I said. Of course. Take all the time you need. He stood, started to leave, then turned back. Barbara, I know you used that land your mother left you to pay for your lawyer. That property is valuable now. If you drop this divorce, you won't need the lawyer. You could sell that land. We could use the money for retirement. Travel. Do all the things we always talked about. There it was. The real reason for this meeting. He knew about the land. Somehow he'd found out. And now he wanted it. How did you know about the property? I asked quietly. Richard's expression flickered. Marcus mentioned you'd taken out a loan. I put two and two together. Marcus mentioned it. How would Marcus know? I don't know, Barbara. Does it matter? The point is... Get out, I said softly. What? This whole reconciliation act. It's about the land, isn't it? You thought if you sweet-talked me, I'd drop the divorce, and then eventually you'd convince me to sell the property, and share the money with you. Or maybe you already have another plan to take it. Richard's mask cracked. You're being paranoid. I'm being smart. For the first time in years, I'm seeing clearly. And I see you, Richard. Finally, I really see you. I stood up, leaving the roses on the table. Have your lawyer contact my lawyer. That's the only communication I'll accept from now on. I walked out of the cafe without looking back. When I got home, I called my daughter Karen in Boston. Mom, is everything okay? I hadn't told the children about the divorce yet. I'd been trying to protect them, keep them out of it. But I couldn't do this alone anymore. Karen, I need to tell you something about your father and me. I told her everything. The whole story came pouring out. Karen was silent for a long moment after I finished. Then, that son of a bitch. Mom, I'm coming home. This weekend. You shouldn't be dealing with this alone. You have work, the kids. Nothing is more important than this. I'm calling David and Michael too. We're family. We stand together. That weekend, all 3 of my children converged on Portland. David flew in from Seattle Friday night. Karen arrived Saturday morning with her husband, Tom. Michael drove up from Denver. We sat around my kitchen table, the same table where I'd signed away my rights under Richard's intimidation. And I told them everything again. He tried to leave you with nothing. David's face was red with anger. After everything you did for this family? Did Uncle Marcus really help him? Michael asked quietly. He'd always liked Marcus. Marcus orchestrated it, I said. I'm sure of it. What do you need from us? Karen asked. Money for lawyers? A place to stay? No. I just need you to know the truth. Your father is going to try to turn you against me. He'll have his own version of events. We're not 12 anymore, Mom, David said firmly. We can see who's telling the truth. That evening, Richard called Michael. I watched my youngest son's face harden as he listened. No, Dad. I've heard Mom's side. I don't care what you think happened. You know what? Don't call me again until you're ready to do right by her. He hung up. He said you're mentally unstable, Michael told me. That you're imagining conspiracies. That Marcus is just trying to help. Do you believe him? Hell no, I've never heard you sound more clear-headed in my life. My children stayed through Sunday. Before they left, they made me promise to call if Richard or Marcus tried anything else. We're on your side, Mom, Karen said, hugging me hard. Always. After they left, I felt stronger than I had in months. Richard had tried to isolate me, intimidate me, sweet-talk me. But I wasn't alone, and I wasn't backing down. They came on a Tuesday evening, just after dark. I saw the headlights in my driveway, 2 cars, Richard's sedan and Marcus's SUV. Through the window, I watched 4 figures get out. Richard, Marcus, Patricia, and a woman I didn't recognize. My heart started pounding. I locked the front door, pulled out my phone, and texted Jennifer. Richard and Marcus here with 2 others. Recording conversation. I'd learned to be prepared. My phone was already set to record audio. The doorbell rang, then pounding. Barbara, we know you're in there, Marcus called. We just want to talk. We brought a mediator. Someone neutral who can help us all come to an understanding. A mediator? This was a new tactic. Against my better judgment, or maybe because I wanted witnesses to whatever they were planning, I opened the door with the chain still on. What do you want? The unknown woman stepped forward. She was about 50, professionally dressed, carrying a leather portfolio. Mrs. Morrison, I'm Dr. Sheila Brennan. I'm a family counselor and mediator. Your husband asked me to facilitate a conversation between you all. May we come in? I don't recall agreeing to any mediation. Barbara, please, Richard said, his voice wounded. We're trying to be civilized here. We're trying to make peace. Our children are suffering because of this conflict. Our children support me, I said. Patricia's expression soured. That's because you've poisoned them against their father. You've manipulated them with lies. The only lies in this family came from your husband and mine. Mrs. Morrison, Dr. Brennan interjected smoothly, I understand emotions are high. That's exactly why a neutral third party can help. Just 30 minutes of conversation. That's all we're asking. Something about this felt wrong, but they had a professional mediator. Maybe I could use this to get Richard and Marcus on record admitting things. Fine, 30 minutes. Living room only. I unchained the door. It was a mistake. They settled into my living room like invading forces. Dr. Brennan took the armchair, my chair. Richard and Marcus sat on the sofa. Patricia perched on the ottoman, blocking the path to the front door. I sat in the dining room chair I'd brought in, phone in my pocket, recording everything. Now, Dr. Brennan began, I've heard Richard's perspective on the situation. Barbara, why don't you share yours? I gave the abbreviated version. The coerced signature, the divorce filing, the hidden financial transfers. Dr. Brennan nodded sympathetically. I can see why you'd feel betrayed. However, Richard has explained that the property transfer was for legitimate estate planning purposes, and that you've since hired an aggressive attorney who's frozen all family assets, making it difficult for Richard to even pay his bills. Aggressive attorney? I repeated. Her words, not mine, Dr. Brennan said. But I have to ask, is punishing Richard really in anyone's best interest? You've been married nearly 50 years. Surely there's a path to reconciliation? I'm not interested in reconciliation with a man who tried to steal everything from me. Steal? Richard exploded. I built that wealth. I worked for 40 years while you stayed home. Raised your children, you mean? Managed your household, supported your career. Ladies, gentlemen, Dr. Brennan said, let's stay constructive. Barbara, Richard has prepared a new settlement offer. Very generous. He's willing to give you the house, my house, and a monthly stipend for life. In return, you'd sign over the investment portfolio and your agreement not to pursue any claims against Marcus for the loans. There it was. They wanted me to legitimize Marcus's theft. No. You haven't even heard the numbers, Patricia snapped. I don't need to. The answer is no. Marcus leaned forward. Barbara, you need to think about your future. You're 73. How many years do you realistically have left? Why spend them in court, burning through money on lawyers, stressing yourself into an early grave? Is that a threat? It's reality. You have health issues. I have no health issues. You're clearly under enormous stress, not thinking clearly. Dr. Brennan can attest that your behavior today has been irrational and hostile. I looked at Dr. Brennan. Her expression was carefully neutral, but something in her eyes. You're not a real mediator, are you? I said slowly. You're someone Marcus hired. Maybe an actress. Maybe a friend. But you're not neutral. Dr. Brennan's mask slipped for just a second. Mrs. Morrison, I'm a licensed family therapist. Then you'd know that ethical mediators don't come to someone's home unannounced at night with only one party's perspective. Let me see your credentials. She didn't move. Barbara, you're being paranoid again, Richard said. This is exactly what we're talking about. You've become suspicious, hostile, impossible to reason with. Get out of my house. We're trying to help you, Patricia shrilled. You're going to lose everything. The judge will see you're incompetent, unstable. I said, get out. Marcus stood slowly. All pretense of friendliness was gone. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. You think you're winning because you've got our assets frozen? We'll bury you in legal fees. We'll drag this out for years. You'll die before this is settled, Barbara. Is that what you want? What I want is for you to leave my property, now, or I'm calling the police. Call them, Marcus sneered. Tell them you're harassing your elderly husband who just wants to settle things peacefully. I pulled out my phone, dialed 911. Yes, I need police at 1247 Elm Street. My estranged husband and his family have entered my home and are refusing to leave. Richard's face went pale. You're calling the cops on me? You don't live here anymore, Richard. You're trespassing. They left finally, but the fury in Marcus's eyes was terrifying. At the door, he turned back. You're going to regret this. We were offering you a way out. Now we're going to destroy you. After they'd gone, I stood in my living room, shaking. The police arrived 10 minutes later. I gave a statement, showed them the divorce papers proving Richard had moved out. You might want to consider a restraining order, ma'am, the younger officer said, if they come back. After they left, I sat in the darkness, my heart still racing. They'd tried kindness. They'd tried intimidation. Now they were threatening all-out war. Part of me was terrified. But another part, the part that had been growing stronger these past weeks, was grimly satisfied. Let them show their true colors. Let them make mistakes in their anger. I was ready. The courthouse was granite and glass, imposing and cold. The divorce hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Friday in late February, 3 months after this nightmare had begun. Jennifer had prepared me well. Just answer the questions honestly and calmly. Don't let Richard's lawyer provoke you. We have the evidence. We have the truth. That's all we need. I wore my navy blue suit, the one I'd bought for Karen's wedding. I wanted to look dignified, capable, not like the frightened woman who'd signed away her rights in her living room. Richard arrived with his attorney, Howard Finch, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit. Marcus and Patricia sat in the gallery behind them. All three stared at me with barely concealed hatred. My children sat behind me. David, Karen, and Michael had all taken time off work to be here. Their presence steadied me. Judge Patricia Reeves was in her 60s, sharp-eyed and no nonsense. She'd reviewed all the pre-trial filings. Now she wanted to hear directly from us. Mr. Finch, you may begin, she said. Finch stood. Your Honor, this is a straightforward dissolution of marriage. Mrs. Morrison signed a clear, legal document transferring property rights to my client. She now suffers from buyer's remorse and has hired an attorney to overturn a valid agreement. Ms. Chen, the judge said. Jennifer rose. Your Honor, Mrs. Morrison signed that document under duress, without legal counsel, while being intimidated by 2 men. Furthermore, we have evidence that Mr. Morrison has been systematically hiding and dissipating marital assets with help from his brother, Marcus Morrison, in preparation for this divorce. Strong accusations, Judge Reeves said. I'll hear testimony. Mr. Morrison, please take the stand. Richard was sworn in. Finch walked him through the story they'd prepared, how he'd asked me to sign the papers for estate planning, how I'd seemed to understand, how I'd only objected after becoming influenced by my attorney. Did you threaten your wife? Finch asked. Never. I raised my voice in frustration, perhaps, but I never threatened her. Was your brother Marcus present? Yes, but only as a witness to the signature. Jennifer's cross-examination was surgical. Mr. Morrison, you testified you asked your wife to sign for estate planning purposes. Yet you filed for divorce 1 week later. Did you know you were going to file for divorce when you asked her to sign? Richard hesitated. The marriage had been troubled. Yes or no, please. I was considering it. So you asked your 73-year-old wife to sign away all her property rights, knowing you were about to divorce her? The estate planning was legitimate. Mr. Morrison, did you receive $120,000 from cash advances on 3 credit cards between August and October of last year? Finch objected. Relevance? Goes to dissipation of assets, Your Honor, Jennifer said. I'll allow it, Judge Reeves said. Mr. Morrison? I took some cash advances, yes. And where did that money go? Various expenses. Did it go to your brother Marcus? Richard's face reddened. Some of it. He had loans to repay. Loans from 30 years ago that you suddenly remembered when your wife hired an attorney? Those were legitimate. Mr. Morrison, we subpoenaed your brother's bank records. The deposits match your cash advances to the day. Before October, Marcus Morrison had no documented loans from you. The paper trail you created appeared after my client hired counsel. Isn't that correct? I don't remember the exact. The bank records don't lie, Mr. Morrison. You systematically moved marital assets to your brother to hide them from your wife before filing for divorce. Yes or no? It wasn't like that. Your Honor, I'd like to call Marcus Morrison to the stand, Jennifer said. Marcus looked like he wanted to run, but he'd been subpoenaed. He had no choice. Under oath, Marcus was less smooth. Jennifer hammered him with questions about the money, the timing, the suddenly appearing loan documentation. Mr. Morrison, did you advise your brother to have his wife sign over property before filing for divorce? I gave him general advice about protecting assets. Protecting from whom? His wife of 47 years? In divorce situations, it's smart to defraud your spouse? To hide money? To coerce signatures? Objection! Finch shouted. Sustained, Judge Reeves said. Ms. Chen, rephrase. But the damage was done. Marcus was sweating, contradicting himself, getting tangled in his story. When I took the stand, I was calm. I told the truth simply and clearly. The intimidation, the fear, the signature, Richard's coldness, Marcus's threats, the fake mediator. Did you understand what you were signing? Jennifer asked. Yes. I was signing away my life, but I was afraid. My husband had never spoken to me that way, never looked at me with such contempt. I thought if I didn't sign, something worse would happen. Do you want to be divorced from your husband? I looked at Richard. He stared back, his expression hard. No, I said honestly. I wanted to spend my old age with the man I married, but that man is gone. The person sitting over there is a stranger. So yes, I'll accept the divorce, but I won't accept being robbed. The hearing lasted 6 hours. By the end, Judge Reeves had heard enough. I'll issue my ruling in writing within 2 weeks, she said, but I'll give you my preliminary thoughts now. Mr. Morrison, the evidence suggests a pattern of financial misconduct and marital asset dissipation. The property transfer document Mrs. Morrison signed appears to have been obtained through duress and will likely be voided. I'm continuing the freeze on all assets pending final distribution. Temporary spousal support will be paid by Mr. Morrison to Mrs. Morrison in the amount of $4,000 monthly. This court is adjourned. Richard's face went white. Marcus cursed under his breath. We'd won. Not everything. Not yet. But we'd won the battle that mattered. Outside the courthouse, my children hugged me. Mom, you were amazing, Karen said, tears in her eyes. The judge saw right through Dad and Uncle Marcus, David added. Jennifer smiled. The written ruling will be even better. Trust me. I looked back at the courthouse. Through the glass doors, I could see Richard and Marcus arguing with their lawyer. They'd underestimated me. They'd thought I was weak. They'd learned otherwise. Judge Reeves's written ruling arrived 2 weeks later. Jennifer called me the moment she'd finished reading it. Barbara, sit down. You're going to want to be sitting for this. My hands trembled as I opened the PDF she'd emailed. The ruling was 32 pages long. I skipped to the conclusion. The court finds that the property transfer agreement signed by Barbara Morrison on November 15th was obtained through duress and undue influence and is hereby void and unenforceable. All property rights revert to their status before the agreement was signed. Furthermore, the court finds that Richard Morrison engaged in systematic dissipation of marital assets by transferring $120,000 to his brother Marcus Morrison under false pretenses. Marcus Morrison is hereby ordered to return the full amount, plus interest, within 30 days. The court finds Richard Morrison's conduct during these proceedings to be dishonest and undertaken in bad faith. As such, the court awards Barbara Morrison the marital home at 1,247 Elm Street, valued at $620,000 as her sole and separate property, 75% of all remaining marital assets, including savings, investments, and Richard Morrison's pension, of which she is awarded 60% rather than the standard 50%. Permanent spousal support of $5,500 per month until her death or remarriage, $85,000 in attorney's fees to be paid by Richard Morrison, Barbara Morrison's separate property, including the trust property in the Columbia River Gorge, remains her sole and separate property. Richard Morrison is awarded 25% of remaining marital assets, his personal belongings. No claim to spousal support. The court further orders that Marcus Morrison's fraudulent receipt of marital funds be investigated by the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. I'd won. Everything. The house was mine. The money was mine. The land my mother had given me was protected. And Richard had to pay me every month for the rest of my life. But it was the final paragraph that made me smile. This court does not look favorably upon attempts to defraud a spouse of nearly 50 years through intimidation and financial manipulation. Mr. Morrison's conduct has been reprehensible. Mrs. Morrison is entitled to security and dignity in her retirement years, which this ruling aims to provide. Jennifer was laughing when she called back. Did you see the part about criminal investigation? Barbara, Marcus could face charges for receiving stolen property. This is even better than I hoped. Richard's lawyer filed an appeal, of course. But appeals take money, and Richard's assets were now severely limited. The temporary support became permanent. Every month, like clockwork, $5,500 appeared in my account. The house sale Richard had hoped for never happened. Instead, I stayed in my home. The home I'd made, the home I'd raised my children in. Marcus had to sell his house in California to repay the $120,000. Patricia called me once, screaming about how I'd destroyed their lives. I hung up on her. The Columbia River Gorge property. I kept it for a year, then sold it for $485,000. I used some of the money to travel, something Richard and I had always talked about, but never done. I went to Italy with Karen, to Scotland with David. Michael and I visited the Grand Canyon. The rest I put in trust for my grandchildren's education. Richard, meanwhile, moved into a small apartment in Beaverton. The 25% of assets he received wasn't nothing, but it wasn't the fortune he'd planned on. His lifestyle had to change dramatically. No more country club, no more expensive dinners, no more playing the successful retiree. I heard through mutual friends that he and Marcus weren't speaking anymore. The criminal investigation into Marcus went nowhere. Not enough evidence for charges, apparently, but the public record of the case was enough. Marcus's reputation in his business community was destroyed. Patricia divorced him 6 months later. Richard tried to contact me once, about a year after the divorce was final. He sent another letter. Barbara, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. I was a fool. I listened to the wrong people. I threw away the best thing in my life. Can we at least be friends? I tore up the letter without responding. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. He'd shown me who he truly was. I believed him. My lawyer, Jennifer, became a friend. We had lunch once a month, comparing notes on our lives. You know what the best part of your case was? She said one day. Watching you transform. You came into my office terrified and defeated. You left a warrior. My mother would be proud, I said. She tried to teach me to always have something of my own, something no one could take. I finally understood why. The final blow to Richard came from an unexpected source. Our children. David, Karen, and Michael had tried to maintain relationships with their father after the divorce, but Richard couldn't help himself. He kept making excuses, blaming me, asking them to understand his side. At Christmas dinner, which I hosted at my house with all my children and grandchildren, Karen told me what had happened. Dad called last week and asked to borrow money, said his rent was going up and his budget was tight. I asked him what happened to his assets from the divorce. He said you'd taken everything. What did you say? I told him I'd read the court ruling. I knew exactly what he'd tried to do to you. Then I hung up. Michael and David did the same when he called them. You didn't have to do that, I said quietly. Yes, we did. He made his choices. He has to live with the consequences. That evening, watching my grandchildren play in the home I'd fought to keep, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Richard had tried to erase me, to leave me with nothing. Instead, he'd lost everything that mattered, and I had everything I needed. 2 years after the divorce, my life had transformed completely. I painted again, watercolors of the Oregon coast. Sold 3 pieces at a local gallery. Helen and I took pottery classes, laughing like teenagers. I joined a book club with women who'd survived their own battles. My children visited constantly. Karen brought the grandchildren every summer. Michael bought a beach house. I spent weekends watching the ocean, breathing freedom. The $5,500 monthly support arrived like clockwork. I started a scholarship fund for divorced women. 3 got $5,000 yearly. The Eleanor Morrison Fund, after my mother. I traveled. Greece, Ireland, Japan, all the places Richard said we'd visit someday. Meanwhile, Richard's life collapsed. His rent tripled. He moved to a worse neighborhood, drove a 15-year-old Honda. Country club membership canceled. He developed diabetes, high blood pressure, had a heart attack. Marcus fell harder. Patricia divorced him. He fled to Arizona, but his ruined reputation followed. A former partner sued for fraud. Marcus drowned in legal fees. He begged Richard for help. Richard had nothing. The brothers stopped speaking. Patricia remarried in San Diego, cut all Morrison ties. A friend whispered, I saw Richard at the food bank. I felt no vindication, just freedom. My 76th birthday filled my backyard. 25 people, 3 generations, pure joy. That night, alone under stars, I thought about the frightened woman who'd signed those papers. I barely recognized her. I'd spent 50 years being Richard's wife. Now I was just Barbara. And that was everything. To anyone listening, protect yourself. Not because you expect the worst, but because love doesn't guarantee loyalty. Have your own account, your own property, your own escape route. And if someone tries to take everything from you, fight. No matter your age, no matter how tired you are. What would you have done in my place? Thank you for listening to my story.